Welcome to the Dynasty Dummies podcast. I am Zach Reed, and I am joined tonight by JMic at JMic Check. This is going to be a thing, JMic. We are hopefully. Well, we should put this out in the ether. I should be a little more confident, positive. We are going to start being a little more regular. We're going to add a little fiber in our diet. We're going to be in your ears hopefully every week. We got the day 2 draft show coming up next week, and then following that we're going to start to try to put out some content. I'm excited about this, JMic. I'm excited to talk to you every week. That makes me happy. That's one of the things that makes me the happiest in fantasy football, in life. But I'm also excited to see where we can take this thing.
Yeah, listen, anytime you can, when you get to be men of our age, which really isn't that old, but we can laugh about it. You get to be our age, a little Metamucil for the pod wouldn't really hurt. Little regularity, a little free flowing. Okay, let me chill out with the references. There.
7 bowls of total.
Yeah. What? So yeah, I'm happy to be here with you. Happy that we can continue moving the ball forward little by little, while also holding tightly to the roots of why we even do this. And obviously you and I enjoy doing life together and talking and things of that nature, but also inviting others on this journey with us to be able to explore this dynasty space, to explore thoughts, and essentially, this is kind of a weird thing to say, but to be inclusive and bring people along for the ride. So I'm excited to be able to explore that space with you.
Absolutely. And I think that's the crux of it, that inclusivity. And it's been something that has been on my mind a lot lately. And you may have noticed if you follow me on Twitter and you've seen my timeline, there have been a lot of similar tweets where I keep noticing people being upset, people being fed up with the dynasty community. I saw a tweet the other day where somebody was like, what do you hope to happen in the NFL draft? And the response was, well, I hope that redraft season starts so I can get rid of all these dynasty guys, polluting my timeline. And it made me pause and think about where I started in this space back in 2014 and 2015 on Twitter, and then with the podcast, and how things have changed, but how much they've stayed the same while they changed. Mm-hmm. And I tweeted out, like, don't let people gatekeep you. Don't let the dynasty community be snobby and elitist, because I think we're really intense. Like, the dynasty community is intense.
It is, Zach, but to be fair, and I want to make sure that we give proper context to kind of where we're going and with what you said, so that people are trying to figure out, wait, where am I finding this tweet? Where did he say this at? When was this? So I've got the tweet pulled up here, and I actually want to read through it. It's going to be weird, me reading your tweet, but
this is a dream of mine.
It does. A little inception going on here. So this was on April the 12th at 5:20 p.m. Eastern time. At Tacit Assassin 13 says this: I've seen a lot of people be frustrated with the dynasty community on Twitter, sometimes hinting, sometimes being flat out overt. And I get it. Dynasty people can get intense, read snobby, elitist, and sometimes downright, excuse my French, asshats. Don't be gatekept, but don't be gatekept and miss out on dynasty. And there's a wonderful thread that comes behind it to be able to break that down some. So if you're interested in actually seeing that for what it's worth, please check out the tweet. But continue, Zach. I feel like that tweet alone encapsulates a lot, especially for the world that you're about to walk down right now.
Yeah, and so that's where this whole thing started for me back in 2014 and 2015. And 2014, for some context, you had that amazing rookie class with the wide receivers where you
headlined by Sammy Watkins.
Jarvis Landry, but whatever. Sammy Watkins. But yeah, so you had Odell Beckham, you had Sammy Watkins, you had Jarvis Landry. I mean, you had just this incredible influx of talent in this rookie class. And when that happened, you had this huge influx of people stream into Dynasty, and I was one of them. I was brand new. This was, I mean, it's to shout out Joe at FF Trader Joe. It was a whole new world. Like this is where we were, and the Dynasty community at that point, because it was so small and so close knit. It was Scott Fish and Ryan McDowell and the Dynasty nerds, and like Dynasty Happy Hour was just starting. You had Tim, who would eventually be Dynasty Happy Hour, but he and Kelly had the Red Zone show. Like it was a very small community, and there were a lot of people willing to talk, discuss ideas, discuss strategies, be very open, help people along the way. Where like the whole Kyle and I got into doing the Dynasty Dummies podcast in a mock draft for the Dynasty nerds. So we're in a mock draft DM with Rich Dotson and the John Bosch. And we started talking about how we might want to start a podcast. And Bosch is like, oh, yeah, you should. And then Rich is like, oh, yeah, you'll need to do Libsyn. And you know, these are good starter mics. And all of a sudden, we were part of the Dynasty community. And it feels like we've lost that a little bit. But I think part of that is because there were so many people that came in 2014 and 2015 that have grown so much that now we're in 2022 with this new influx of people who came in 2020 and 2021, that first wave is now the old guard. And we're really intense, and we've worked the kinks out, and we've done all the theorems and figured out the mathematical proofs, and there's no such thing as vacated targets, and zero RB is a viable strategy, and you have to play superflex and all. None of that actually matters. It doesn't. But we're so intense, and we've done this for so long, we've gotten a little cantankerous. And what I would like to do with the Dynasty Dummies, with you and myself, JMic, is try to peel back, try to maybe again, it could be Gatsby, it could be you can't relive the past, but what I'd like to do is just kind of walk it back and grow again with this new set of people, because I don't want you to be turned off by somebody telling you have to play Superflex or you have to have a 15, taxi squad, 15 player taxi squad, or your draft has to be 8-round Devi depleted or else you're not doing Dynasty right. No. Dynasty, if you're rolling your rosters over year to year, that's Dynasty. Full stop, period. Mm-hmm. Beyond that, play what you like. But the great thing about Dynasty, because you're rolling the rosters over, because you're keeping your league together, you get to make these relationships. And I want to start to reforge these relationships with this community, because it's a great community, and it just needs a little nudge, or maybe a little understanding, a little bit of this is what we're doing instead of this is how to do it. A little more teaching and a little more talking and a little more negotiating, rather than applying pressure and beating people down and trying to fit them in the exact mold you want. Because this game can be so great, and it can be whatever you want it to be and still be beautiful.
I think that it's important for us, and I think that that's beautifully put by you. I think it's important for us, as you say, when we take this step back, when we peel back the layers a bit, to level set to a large degree as to putting ourselves back in the place that originally brought us here while we've been in this space, And I'll tell you, as you talk through that, I'm 100% one of the guilty people, hand raised, chief center amongst people when it comes to when there's a lot of discourse on Twitter that I see as being negative or incredibly frustrating, or whatever the case may be, of people shouting at other people about how they're supposed to be playing Dynasty. I tend to go into a cocoon. I tend to go to a very safe place and a very safe space of very few people, and it's not necessarily because I want to, but it is somewhat of a defense mechanism for me, so that I don't say something that I'll probably end up regretting, or that I don't act in such a way that doesn't represent my loved ones or my my friends very well. So I think one thing that may be valuable for folks who may be new to the Dynasty Dummies, for folks who have been even more exposed to us via the Hoot Nanny that we had with the rookie drafts, or Zach's various appearances on many podcast platforms, but most notably the Dynasty Grind over with Peter Howard and Russ Fisher, and seeing you weekly, Zach. I think it's important that we do give people just a snapshot of, hey, what is it that initially drew us into this space, and why? And obviously, everyone's reasoning isn't going to be the same, but I do think that there is a common denominator that can be found. And I want to explore that with you some too. So let's just go back for a second. Again, you talk about 2014. We'll go down memory lane for a moment. Talk a little bit about what initially drew you to the Dynasty space.
Again, it was the people. So I started listening to Dynasty podcasts before I ever got into Twitter, before I ever even thought of doing my own podcast. And you start listening to somebody every week, and you start learning things about them. And the hosts of these shows become your friends before you've ever interacted with them, before you've ever met them. They're your friends. And so that right there connected me to Dynasty. And then the idea behind the dummies being, we don't know everything. We don't want to come in and tell you that we know. My phrase that I always go back to is, anybody who tells you that they know is selling something. And you want to get as far away from that as possible. Like, a big mistake people make is repeatedly focusing on proving themselves right instead of achieving the best outcome. You got to be on the right side of wrong, if that makes sense. Like, you can be wrong, and that's fine. Understand what happened, understand what behind the decision led you down the wrong way, and what behind a good decision. Some of it's going to be luck, some of it's going to be other people giving you good information. I mean, that's the Kevin O'Brien who had the brilliant the fantasy football engineering, like, it was such a brilliant podcast, and he always used to say, borrowing brilliance. And we kind of have always done that on the dummies. And what I like to try to do is borrow that brilliance and make it accessible. Because I think sometimes you get people who are so smart and so expert at what they do, and I don't mean to denigrate anybody, but like, Peter Howard falls into that sometimes. Peter's brilliant, and sometimes he will talk, and you see people try to keep up or be intimidated by, like, all of the he's got this incredible database, and he's put together all of these metrics, and he's but he's just a problem solver. He sees a problem, and he's like, okay, well, what's the answer? And then he tries to figure out what the answer to that problem is, and he'll be the first to tell you he's going to be wrong a whole bunch of times, but when he finally gets it, it looks like he's just pulled it out of thin air, or has done all he's done. It's trial and error and error and error and error, and then find this little bit of something that gives you just a minute edge, and if you do enough of those, then you're way ahead in fantasy football. But it's sometimes difficult to talk about if man, I mean, I think sometimes it's a lot like players, like really star players. You remember Larry Bird trying to coach the Pacers?
Yeah.
Yeah, see, you're
Boom,
laughing
boom,
already.
boom, boom.
But he was incredible.
Mm,
And sometimes if you are that much of a savant at something, it's hard to explain it on a level where everybody can get it. And I think that's where we're at with Dynasty, is because
mhm,
there have been so many people who have been so good, and they've gotten to these heights where you've got Scott Barrett, who's working PFF and just doing like crazy things, and you've got Evan Silva, and you've got all these brilliant people, and sometimes they forget to talk to me or talk to the thousands of people who just came into fantasy football and to Dynasty 2 years ago. And it's not that the people that came in 2 years ago are not smart. They are. It's great. Like, I've had great interactions on Twitter with people who have just shown up, but they're relearning these lessons, and it's okay. Like, we can let them grow at their own pace, and I want to come back and grow with you, and get back to where, like, it's that sense of community instead of that antagonistic uh relationship. I mean, I think that it's about negotiating, and negotiations aren't about convincing people, they're about understanding. And if you can negotiate, if you can understand, if you can see where someone else is coming from without applying pressure to them,
mhm.
we're going to be a lot further ahead.
Colin Cowherd once had a quote that I heard, and I used to be a really big fan of his show back in the day. Um, and I remember I believe it was a commute to work I was going on, and he said something to the effect of, "I don't want to be the person that has to be right. I want to be the person that needs to get it right."
Yeah.
And I love the wordplay there, because when you hear it, it almost sounds the same, being right and getting it right. But of course, you're landing in the same place, right? In terms of making it happen and landing in the place that you want to be, or getting something correct. The One of the really interesting things that I'm finding as I continue to get older is that everyone has a want and a need to be known. And that's not necessarily in some vain fashion. That's just a matter of saying some people want to be known. They want to go and they want to have their cheers moment. Sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name, right? You want to be accepted into an area, accepted into a place that is welcoming and that knows you and says, "Hey, you, wonderful you, with all your warts and all of your scars and all of your gold medals, all of your silver medals, all the times you didn't place, like, hey, come over here, sit with us." Right. And that's one of the beautiful things about this dynasty space. Um, and sometimes can bring out a little bit of that darker side, is that oftentimes people are so bent and so focused on being right versus the idea of how do we get it right? How do we collaborate with each other to be able to explore new ideas, explore new concepts, have discourse that actually pushes each of us forward, have conversations that build each other up instead of calling each other idiots left and right and tearing other people down. And the beauty of walking into the space and walking into this dynasty space in particular, to say, hey, I don't have to be right. I just want to get it right, and I want to get it right for what that looks like for me, and I want to explore new things and try new things. And I think the beauty of really embracing that idea and leaving being right at the door, that really can allow for us to lock arm in arm and say, hey, I want to have a lot of fun with you. I also want to kick your butt if we're in a league together, and I want to be able to have those bragging rights and laugh about that and poke fun at you. But I also want to build this out to be have a lot of fun and explore new things with you. So, what are your thoughts, Zach, when I talk through the being right versus getting it right? What are your thoughts when it comes to access and that kind of free flow of information for people? What are your thoughts on if we're all coming to the table, what or maybe not even what, it could be a question of how or what. Let's keep on the what train first. What do we need to do to get us in a place that allows us to enjoy this game again, to enjoy this space again?
So I think the first thing you need to do is understand that having a differing opinion from somebody else does not necessarily mean that you're wrong or that they're wrong. And it does not mean that their point is invalid or invaluable.
Say it again for the people in the back.
Absolutely. Like that's it. Like just because somebody disagrees with you doesn't make them wrong, but it also doesn't make them not have value to you. Like protect the dissenting opinion, man. Like that I get more from, and you'll see me when I interact with people. If I agree with somebody, it may be a couple tweets and that's it. If I'm disagreeing with somebody, it'll be 5 or 6 or 7 and back and forth, and I'll ask questions because I want to know how you arrived at a different opinion, because that may be something that I never even thought of. And so you may change part of my process, even if you don't completely change my opinion. Like if we're having a Drake London conversation and I'm saying I don't really see it with Drake London, and then you come in and say, okay, well, look at him separate on these slants and look what he does post catch, and I've got these numbers that back up what I'm saying. Maybe I haven't seen that. Maybe I haven't looked at that. At the very least, I'm going to take what you said and examine that. And that either is going to strengthen my process or strengthen my process because you've given me another way to look at something instead of me shouting you down or instead of you shouting somebody else down. We can learn from dissenting opinions. We kind of lost that a little bit as not just fantasy football. Now we're getting big. Now we're pulling it back to like real life, but like we've kind of lost the ability to disagree with somebody and still give them a handshake and a hug afterwards and go out and get a sandwich. Like we've forgotten how to do that. And we've also forgotten how to critically think and assess opinions that aren't the same as ours and understand that not only could they be right and could we swing and see a different point of view, but also understand that like somebody is coming from that point of view. And nobody goes into something thinking, man, I'm wrong. I'm just going to be wrong. Like there's somebody on the other end of that point of view. So like try to understand them. Like we've lost a little bit of this sense of community because we're so intent on browbeating everybody to think just like us. And I don't know about you, but if everybody thought like me, first of all, sometimes I don't even want to be in my own head. So let's not do that. But the other, like, it's going to be boring. Like if everybody ends up thinking the same way, like that's not any fun. There's no, I mean, in terms of fantasy, there's no edge to be gained there. There's no, like, if everybody goes into a draft and everybody runs a 0 RB draft and everybody is taking wide receivers in the first, nobody gains an advantage.
Right.
So understanding, even if you don't agree with everything somebody is saying, even if you don't, I mean, you don't even have to agree with anything somebody is saying, but you have to listen and you have to understand that perspective, because if you don't, man, you're missing out on information, but B, also a human being that you could be interacting with that may end up being somebody that ends up in a league with you, that you end up being friends with, going forward. And I think we need to stop, remember that, and listen, and just, I don't like, again, take that information, understand the perspectives, understand that there is somebody coming at it from a different direction than you are, who's been through different experiences that you have, whether it be whether it be fantasy football or whether it be life.
The perspectives of others, um, and I think this can get real philosophical real fast if I'm not careful. So I should probably stop before I start preaching at folks. But I do find it interesting when we think about, like, do we value other people? Do we value them or see them for how valuable that person who is brand new to Dynasty, with all of their thoughts of feelings of grandeur and everything else about winning championships every year and everything else? Do we value their thoughts as the person who's been in Dynasty for 6, 7, 3, 4, however many years or seasons that you've been able to do that? And I think you hit on something really special there, because in that place of understanding the perspective of someone who's brand new to it versus someone who's been doing it for a long time, oftentimes we may assign value to experiential knowledge, right? So for the person that's been doing this, for the person that's been able to run X amount of queries and studies to determine what is more likely to be true versus what's less likely to be true, we put a lot of value on these things that have been tried and tested. And one of the things that you and I have discussed a lot, and I know that you've talked about in other places, here's where that gets flipped on its head. The beauty of the NFL game that we're playing right now is future casting.
Yeah.
And the NFL, the league itself, as it continues to move and roll, it's not looking back at what was lots of where lots of success was previously had. A lot of it is venturing out into a lot of these uncharted areas, or areas charted by colleges and high schools and various systems that allow for that growth. So I think what's really unique and an area that we can even tap into to really be able to, and for the folks that really want to lean in versus lean out, I think that that's a really unique thing that we can do, is really lean into the fact that we're all coming from different perspectives. And even the person who's coming in that's brand new and the person that's been doing this for a long time, none of us know what's happening next season.
Yeah.
and the game's going in an entirely new area. And my mentor, one of my mentors, his name's Ford Taylor. He's like a father to me. I love him dearly. He has this quote about feedback, and it's something that I chew on often, because I tend to butcher quotes sometimes, but when I hear it, I'll try to write them down and I'll try to hold on to them. But this is something that he's taught for a while, and I even had to go and ask my wife again, like, help me put this quote back together, because I feel like I've told myself it 50 billion times. But I wanted to make sure that I relay this correctly. He says, all feedback is relevant, even if it's not true. All feedback is relevant, even if it's not true, because that perception that someone may have, or the perception or the feedback that someone may give, allows you to either reorient or take the information and understand that you can pivot and do something totally new and different with it. I think that's a really unique, uncharted place. And I've rambled at this point, Zach, so save me from myself.
I love that, and it makes me think of the fresh perspective, that, again, because we've been doing it so long, because we've been jaded for so long, because, like, our opinion is not the only opinion that matters. The opinion, if you have Dynasty Football Analyst in your Twitter handle, in your Twitter bio. That doesn't mean that you have the only valid opinion. It doesn't even mean that you have the best opinion. In fact, there are a lot of people with that in their bio. I'll read something and go, okay, but you still gotta think about it. And the same thing with, like, everybody started in this game at some point. You took your first step. You drafted your first pick. You took Adrian Peterson with the 110, and then turned around and took Drew Brees in the next round, and then had to rebuild your entire team 2 years later. No, that was deeply personal. I apologize. But like those things happen. Like, everybody takes that step, and just because you're coming to this game now in 2022, or you came to the game in 2021, like, it doesn't make your observations, opinions, evaluations any less valid than anybody else. And I again, we're going to have to be kind of a bastion, because there's a lot of shouting on Twitter right now. There's a lot of I'm right, or I'm loud, so I must be right. And there's a lot of, if I tell you you're wrong enough, I'm going to browbeat you into submission. And that's not the community that I love. The community that I love is there. I see it. I don't have very many negative interactions on Twitter, but I think you're right. Like, I cocooned as well. Like, I pulled back into the DFPN DM chat. I pulled back into hanging in a DM with Peter Howard. I've been guilty of that, but that doesn't grow the community, and it doesn't. Worse than that, it's selfish, because there is so much good and fun and interaction that people are missing out on if they just came into this space, that we should be giving back. I mean, that's what we got when we first got here. I mean, how many times has Scott Fish jumped on the open bar like that? Like, how cool is that? Like, we've had Ryan McDowell come on and do a roundtable show on the Dynasty Dummies. Like, that's so cool. Like, I've been able to go on with the Dynasty Trades HQ, or on the DAP network, and on with Peter Howard on the deal. I'm like, I don't think DLF knows I'm there yet, but like, I go on Wednesdays with Peter Howard, and it goes out on the DLF YouTube channel, where like thousands of people are watching. It's like, it's mind blowing to have this opportunity. And then it's really selfish to have pulled back so far. And again, not that I'm not anybody, I'm a dummy, and I'll fully admit that, but like, I'm still part of this community, and I want to be able to extend that hand to all of these people that have come in, so they're not frustrated with Dynasty, so they're not turned off by Dynasty, so they're not discouraged by somebody telling them that they have to do this or they have to do that, so they're not missing out on the community, the camaraderie, the years that this game will give to you. And man, I've never done anything like this, because I can get the community, the interaction, like I'm playing a sport, like I'm on a team, like I've got that family. My body doesn't hurt afterwards. So I can do all of this great stuff, and I can have the jokes, and I can tweak people, and I can trash talk, and I can care about the people in my league, and I can care about the people that I'm interacting with on Twitter. And I get all this from this stupid little game about a game. And I want to come back, and I want to share that. I want to share that with all of these people who've come in who are sitting there looking around going, wow, this is, you've got the cathedral of dynasty football, and you've got all of these people up in the pantheon with, 25,000 or 100,000 or, 200,000 or what. I mean, Matthew Berry's got 2.5 million, like all of these people. And like, you can talk to these, you can interact. You're part of this community. It doesn't matter if you have 10 followers. I had somebody the other day, where like I had some great interactions with them on Twitter. I followed them. And I'm nobody. I don't have very many followers. I have a podcast that a lot of people who do have a lot of followers listen to, but not a lot of people listen to. Like we're not reaching, 5,000-10,000 people. We're reaching, 500-600 people right now. Like it's that we're not. But they said, I don't know what I did to deserve a follow, but thank you. And I said, I'm a real firm believer of surrounding myself and my timeline with positive people and positive interactions. I was like, I'm glad that you're enjoying what I do, but for me, it's fun interacting with everybody that's enjoying this, and I want more people to enjoy it. Like that's where I'm at. That I think this has been kind of a haphazard show. You guys have been in my brain for half an hour now. How does it feel? But like that was kind of the jumping off point for this show, but also a jumping off point for where I hope that I speak for both of us, where we hope to take this is back to the beginning, back to accessible, back to the community, to try to be that again, try to get the arms around everybody and bring them in and say, look, fantasy football is awesome. Redraft is awesome. DFS is awesome. For my money, Dynasty is a whole different game simply because of the continuity year to year of not just your team. That part's fun. Like that part's fun. That part is everybody who's nerding out, who played Madden back as a kid and like built the franchise. Yeah. Built the franchise mode and did that. Like that part's fun. The even better part is year to year, the people. And like, I'm in leagues with you. I'm in leagues with Russ. I'm in leagues with Kyle. I'm in leagues with Riley. I'm in leagues with all of these people. And then in leagues with people that I didn't know, but now I am friends with, I am family with, and we're talking all through the off season. Like how many DMs do you have that just, pop all through the off season, whether we're actually talking fantasy football and trades and things that are going on in current events, or if we're just checking up on each other, because that happens. Like you end up in a league with people and that relationship grows. You start to care about people. You don't just care about their second string quarterback and whether you can get them for, a third round rookie pick and Tyler Boyd.
Yeah.
You actually care about the people in your league and the people that you interact with in the community on Twitter. And it's beautiful. I mean, like the Scott Fish Bowl, I think kind of epitomizes everything that I'm talking about. And if you watch the Scott Fish Bowl happen, and I'm proud of this, I'm proud to be part of the Dynasty Fantasy Football community because nobody shows out like the Dynasty community when it comes to the Scott Fish Bowl. And when it comes to the charity and when it comes to the giving and I mean, all of like the SFB Abbey makers, you look at all of those guys and it's Jake Anderson, who's a Dynasty guy, and it's Dwight and it's Clint and all of these people who, and Bob Gilchrist, and it's just all of these people who are Dynasty and Bosch and like, it's not that the Scott Fish Bowl is not inclusive, because the Scott Fish Bowl is about everybody and it's about raising money for charity and it's about that goodness. But it just it hits for me that the Dynasty community has just embraced that and run with it. And even watching Sal and Kevin and Steve, who are our brothers, there are, the DFPN, they're the F. Sal sometimes more of an F than others, but like watching them go, how can we help? Well, we podcast. All right, let's do a podathon. Let's do a multi-hour show that went from 12 to 24 to 26. Like, and the money that poured in for Toys for Tots, and then other like, it's just like, I love that. I want to share that. I want to bring it back to a level where people can enjoy it and grow the way we did. And I'd like to be there. I'd like to like, it's almost like a rebirth. Like, I'd like to go back and grow with you.
Listen, y'all, the revolution will not be televised, but it will be podcasted. Here with us here at the Dynasty Dummies. We're going to continue and I guess to some degree rekindle just being an open resource to folks to be able to reach out and embrace if you're new, if you're old, wherever you are in this journey of Dynasty fantasy football and life, figuring things out. Welcome. You're amongst a bunch of folks who have very little handle as to everything that's going on, but we're willing to lean in together and do this together. And who would have thunk even a decade ago that a guy from Southern Maine and a guy from Central Kentucky would be here and literally function as brothers from something called Dynasty Fantasy Football and podcasting. And you talk about people who have shared tears together, shared highs, shared lows, shared obviously fantasy stuff, but also just the everyday things of life. And again, being able to go to a place where our upbringing wasn't exactly the same and all the things that we do in our day-to-day aren't the same, but we're as connected as any two people can be connected. So that's us, and that's what we want to be. And consider this an olive branch. Consider this a handout. Consider this a warm embrace. And if you're still a little bit nervous from the pandemic and you've got everybody at arm's reach, consider this a fist bump virtually. And listen, we're here to show love. We're here to try to be a place where ideas are welcome and where we navigate new things and ask questions and don't tell you 100% how to do something, but we tell you things that we've done before that have worked or have not worked, or new ideas that we're exploring because we're in this process of trying to grow too. So Zach, as we kind of put a bow on today's episode and our time together for this evening, what final words or final thoughts do you have in reference to closing out the discussion?
I like the word growth. I think that's where we're trying to head, and growth together. I'm sorry that we didn't talk much football tonight. We will going forward.
To be frank, I'm not sorry, but go ahead, continue. Zach does not speak for me this one time. I am not sorry.
But we're, like, this will be a fantasy football podcast, but there's going to be a lot of other stuff because I think that's important. I think that the most important part of fantasy football is actually not the fantasy football. And so we're going forward. We're going to have the draft. The NFL draft is next week. We are T-minus 1 week from the NFL draft right now. You'll be kicking off the first round. Actually, you'll probably be. We'll probably be at like pick 22 by now. It's 11:50, 10:50. We'll probably be back near pick 22, 23, 24. We're gonna be picking some wide receivers at this point. But then we're gonna do the Dynasty Dummies Day 2 draft show. We'll bring on some friends. I have to tell the friends that that they're coming on. Like I've been a little lax with that, but we're gonna do that. And then after the NFL draft, we're gonna start to get into Dynasty again. It's like that old Kellogg's cornflakes commercial. It's the Dynasty Dummies. Taste them again for the first time.
For the first time. This feels like the lighthouse effect. Like just that light that comes back around.
Yeah.
Still here. Still here. Taste it again. Let us be your lighthouse. Come in. This is a welcome place. No Hansel and Gretel action over here. Don't worry about being eaten or being devoured or being preyed upon. We're here to embrace you and bring you in. So yeah, I'm excited for our day 2 show next week. I'm excited for us continuing to navigate this space together, and I'm excited to be back on the mics with you, my friend. I'm on Twitter at JMic. Zach's on Twitter at TacitAssassin13. Zach, appreciate you. I love you. It's on you.
I love you too, man. And we have to, before we get out, mention the DFPN network, because that's where we are. We have to mention everybody in the network because that's who we are. That's Sal, Kevin, Steve. That's Joe at FF Trader Joe, who, and I say this every time I mention him, and it's true every time I mention him. If you see something on Twitter that comes out of any of the accounts that is funny, that is brilliant, that makes me look even a modicum of intelligent or good, it's Joe. Joe is behind that. Kyle's still there. Kyle, I miss talking to you, but I love having you in that chat. Matt Foreman, who, exciting news for Matt, is going to be on the FF Dynasty. Married to the game.
Married to the game.
I can't wait to listen to him chop it up with the guys from Charleston, South Carolina, and Dynasty Outhouse, Russ. So all of those guys, fantastic follows on Twitter, but fantastic people as well. So if you got fantasy questions, hit them up. Maybe don't hit up Steve, but hit them up. But good follows, good people to have in your corner. And as for all of you who stuck around to listen, we really appreciate you. We hope this is going to be fun going forward, and occasionally informational. So
Here.
with that, this has been the Dynasty Dummies. Thank you for listening. Peace. Click the button.